May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts bring glory to you, God, our strength and our Redeemer. So a few weeks ago, I was with a small group of folks from this church, some newbies and some old-timers, and we were getting to know each other. And I asked each person to say a little bit about what they were looking for when they first came to FCCB and what they were looking for now. Except I didn't actually say, what are you looking for? I think what I said was, in fact, I know what I said, was what are you longing for? And I used that word longing because longing is this awesome spiritual question, right? What are you longing for? What are the desires of your heart? It takes us to a deeper place. It takes us out of that place of surface wants. I'll stand up here so people can see me a little bit better. Takes us out of that place of surface wants into that place of holy desire. When desire can sometimes have a bad rap in Christian circles. Probably because sometimes our mind goes to sex, and it's too bad that that has a bad rap because that is a holy gift from God, but that's a topic for a different sermon. But I know, But desire, spiritual teachers for centuries, probably millennial, have been inviting folks to name and inquire and interrogate their desires as part of spiritual direction, because desire is a way that God speaks to us. The longings of our heart, what tugs at, are the magnets that pull us, can be one of the primary ways that God talks to us, that we find our call. So I think this story that Kit told is really a story about desire. A story about the longings of the hearts of the disciples and Jesus' invitation to follow him as a way of meeting their deepest heart desire. So Jesus says, what are you looking for? Because, Jesus, and that comes from the NRSV, the New Revised Standard Version. Sometimes it's actually translated, what are you seeking, what are you longing for? Because Jesus just gets to the heart of it, right? Just gets to the heart of the question. And in response, the disciples, and they're disciples of John the Baptist at this point. That's the John in this story, John the Baptist. Andrew and the other ones say, where are you staying? And I'm like, really? Of all that, he asks you what you're looking for, what you're desiring, and you want to know his address? I mean, we don't know what those disciples were longing for, what they were looking for. We can wonder about it together and make some guesses, because we know they were disciples of John. And so, as Molly preached about last week, hundreds of people were coming to John the Baptist, traveling long distances through some rough terrain to get to the Jordan River to be baptized. But not all of those people. Most of those people actually, after they got baptized, went back to their homes. But some folks stayed and were John's disciples. That was a different level of commitment. Those people were leaving their homes and their families and their jobs and looking for something. We could imagine that maybe they were looking for, John talked a lot about repentance. Maybe they were looking for redemption. Maybe they were looking for adventure. Maybe they were looking for meaning and purpose. An end to the oppression of the Roman Empire that they were living out of. We don't know exactly what they were looking for, but maybe somewhere in some deep thing, probably. And so John, the author of John, says that they replied, where are you staying? Which seems odd until we remember that, John's gospel, none of the gospels, but particularly John's gospel, it's not an eyewitness account. It's not a transcript of a conversation that actually happened. It was put together at least 70 years after the events it's talking about. None of the gospel writers were interested in writing a history in the way we think about history. They're wanting to talk about what happened, what the meaning was. And for John, the author of the gospel, this idea of where are you staying, where are you abiding, where are you dwelling, is a huge deal for the author of John. To abide, to dwell, that word appears like 40 times throughout the gospel. It's the same word that a little bit earlier when John's talking about, I saw the Spirit and it came upon Jesus' head. the spirit of the dove when he was getting baptized, and the voice said, "This is my beloved son, in whom I'm well pleased." That same word that the Spirit came and stayed on him, it's that same word, abide. It's the same word way later towards the end of the gospel when Jesus is trying to explain in his farewell discourse to his disciples the oneness that can happen between us and Jesus and God. And he talks about, if you dwell in me, I dwell in you, like we dwell in God, like a vine is part of the branch. So to dwell, where are you staying? Where are you dwelling? For John, he's having the disciples ask, where can we find the divine presence? Where does God, where does divinity, where does the holy live? And in response to that, Jesus says, come and see. Now, if it was a literal transcript, I would think the thought bubble above their head would be like, really? Come and see? Can't you just, really? Come on, can't you just tell us? Can't you just tell us where it is? Or can you show us a map? Is there something we can read about it? Do we actually have to go? I mean, we just went to the Jordan, and we spent all this time, and now we have to go on another journey? And I would think that Jesus would sort of look at them and shrug, and like he always did, he'd say, well, you don't have to. You don't have to come. If you want to stay where you are, you can. If you want to find your heart's desire, maybe you want to come and follow me. And so they did. They went and they saw. And what did they see? They went and they stayed with him. And you know this story. They saw miracles of hospitality, miracles of healing, communities that should not have been together, eating together, people who didn't see the world the same way, coming together around the table and listening to each other, deciding to work together for the common good. They saw tables being turned in the temples of power, and Jesus speaking up for the lost and the least. And they saw Jesus having a different way of relating to God, a oneness, continually centered in prayer and in meditation, in blessing and in gratitude with God. That's what they saw. And it so moved them, it so moved Andrew, that at some point he went back to wherever his brother was, and he said, we found it. We found it. We found the Messiah. We found the one. We found what we were looking for. So here's my question, always. I love the Bible for in and of itself, they're great stories, and I think part of our job and our invitation is like, what are these stories written to a community that wasn't us thousands of years ago? What do they have in it for us today? And I think today there's two things that this story has for us. One is an invitation for us to ask ourselves, what am I longing for? What is my heart's desire? Truly, deeply, that's the question. What is the desire of your heart? For you right now in your personal situation, for us in our political moment, 8 days away from the inauguration, for your spiritual life. It's a rhetorical question. You don't have to answer, but I'm imagining that some things might be, I want hope, healing, community, a community that's grounded in something deep and real. Love, family, friendship, an encounter with the living God. We're invited to think about and name those desires and bring them to God. And then the second part is we're invited to consider whether following in the way of Jesus, whether responding to his invitation to come and see, might be a way for us to meet those longings of our heart. I love what Molly said with the kids about how following Jesus. This is something that we say. I say it a lot. I'm a follower of Jesus. It's one of those lines that we can throw around us. What does that actually really mean? Because it meant one thing for those early disciples, because Jesus of Nazareth actually was in the flesh. At some point in history, he actually lived and talked, and people made a decision about an actual person, about whether to follow in his way. For us, it's not that way. He's not here in the flesh. And Christians do not always agree about what it means to follow Jesus. And that's a gift that we get. We get from a loving God who gives us all kinds of freedom. We get to decide what it means to follow in the way of Jesus. We decide that through prayer and discernment, hopefully through study of the scriptures and through the Christian teachers who've come before and teachers maybe of other faiths. We get to decide individually. As a community, we've made some decisions about that. We follow Jesus into prayer through meditation. I'm looking at Bill and Barbara right now. Through meditation, through prayer, individual prayer. During Lent, we're going to have a before church opportunity to pray together as a community. People have prayer partners. We follow Jesus into prayer. We follow Jesus into community, in our soup fellowship, in the ways that we gather together in cohort groups with young adults, with parents, with others who are journeying with us in varying small groups. We follow Jesus into the world, into the messiness and brokenness and hope of the world. On Friday, we'll be following Jesus to the Women's March. Saturday, we'll be following Jesus to the Women's March. A group of us are talking about following Jesus into the sanctuary movement, what that might be like for our congregation. We follow Jesus into People's Park and other places with sandwiches for folks who are homeless. I wonder what it would be to hold the desire we most have in our heart and think about this invitation from Jesus to come and follow him. Somebody asked me recently when I was talking about this, they're like, why do I have to, you're saying that we have to show up. And I was like, yeah, I'm saying that. And they're like, why? Why do we have to show up? Why can't it just, And I said, I don't know why that is. The best I can do is we have an incarnational faith, right? God chose bodies. God chose to show up to us in a body and in our bodies. And the way that we connect with God is by engaging our bodies in prayer, in community, in fellowship, in service, in justice. And it's not I know it can seem like this. It's not a laundry list of things to do. That's actually the opposite of what I'm trying to say. It's not a laundry list of progressive Christian activities to check off. Yeah, it's not. It's about getting quiet and discerning what is the longing of my heart. There are so many needs in the world. So many. None of us can take care of all of them, but all of us are matched with one of them, at least. I think the question for us is what is the match? What is the magnet between the desire of my heart and the need in the world? And the place where those meet. God is right there, wanting to give you everything that your heart desires. So, friends, what are you looking for? The living God, the Christ that was and is calling you into the world from that place, ready to give you more than you could ever hope or imagine. May it be so. Amen.